Hi.
Team. Hello. We're back again by popular demand.
Seriously, it's good to see all your shining faces.
Same.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, afternoon, all the times. I'm jazzed to dig into this topic for a second time. I'm assuming a lot of the folks here today maybe didn't join us earlier in the month. So as a refresh, Monica Taylor and I are going to deep dive the LinkedIn Sales Solutions playbook that they released for B2B deep selling. The summary of the playbook is that deep sellers, or the premise of it is that deep sellers differ from average sellers by focusing on things like building genuine relationships, conducting extensive research, and really gaining that deep understanding of their prospects, of their clients' needs. So we're going to dig into some of the findings from the playbook, share some examples of how we've seen that come to life in our jobs and with the clients that we serve. Before we dig in, Monica, let's just introduce people to us, because I saw some names on the RSVP that I didn't know, which I always love to see some new voices, new faces. Monica, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, my name is Monica Stewart. I'm the founder of MSP Consulting, and I specialize in helping founders of B2B SaaS companies get from 2 to 20 million ARR.
Love it. Yeah. Taylor?
Yeah. My name is Taylor Core. I have been in sales and sales leadership past 10, 12 years or so, mostly on the SMB mid-market side, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Yes, we love the LinkedIn. I did a live yesterday, and it was Learn, Laugh, LinkedIn Live. I have to run with that. Folks, I am Leslie Vanessa. I'm the founder of the sales-led go-to-market agency, and I work with B2B orgs that are 10 to 50 mil, specifically on the strategies, repeatable processes, and skill sets that allow them to run outbound better. Outbound, my passion. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I love it. I'm doubling down on it. What I would love to hear from the folks that are joining us is what role you're in. Are you a founder? Are you a CRO? Some other title? And what role you're currently playing in the sales process? Because I think we might have a bit of a blend of folks that are managers, folks that are founders leading the sales process still, and maybe some individuals that have graduated from that founder-led process to hiring their team. So want to personalize this to the folks that have joined as much as possible. So please head to the comments, tell us about your role in the sales process and your job title, please. So while our amazing guests that have taken time out of their day to join us do that, let's dig in by talking about the importance of building relationships in the context of how do we build those types of genuine connections that this deep sales playbook highlights as being essential to top elite performance and to consistent revenue growth. Monica, I'd like to come to you first because I'd love to hear your approach from the perspective of a founder who is maybe still in a sales-led motion, or maybe they've moved out of the sales-led motion, but they're still involved with deals. How should they be thinking about building those genuine connections?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think one of the things that founders kind of get confused about early on is they separate the idea of relationships from sales conversations. Because when you're in those early stages of starting your company, you're like, oh, I'm going to go sell to my network. I have these relationships, maybe because you came from that industry, or you can get introduced to people through your investors or something like that. And so they kind of run this like relationship-based sales motion. And then there's a totally separate thing in their head where it's like, oh, but then I also have to go talk to people that I don't know. And then I have to like sell to them because I don't have like relationships with them. And they make it really weird. And what I would encourage people to do is think about it as there is not your network and your customers. There is only your network that you are expanding the entire time.
That's
I think
so good.
Yeah, that's the shift. And I think, there's two things that you can sort of tap into to make sure that you're remembering to do that. One is that you have a unique perspective on the problem that you solve for your buyers, because that is literally why your company exists. So, even if you don't feel like you have an in with somebody, you always have something to talk to them about, because you're spreading the gospel of the change that you're trying to create for them and people like them. And then the second thing that I would say is that, don't take things too personally. And I say this specifically in the context of having sales conversations. So most of the people that I work with are running an enterprise sales motion, which is a little bit different from Taylor's experience, which is why I love talking to you. And sometimes they forget that like it takes a couple years to close a lot of these accounts. And so just because if you're trying to sell right now to SAP and you're a startup that has 10 or 20 employees, you're probably not going to close SAP on the first try. Or if you do, it's not really going to be the deal that you're going to have with them eventually. So treat all of those conversations as the beginning of a multi-year relationship, even if they don't become your customers right away, because that's actually what it is.
So brilliant. I was just talking maybe yesterday or the day before about how nurture as an enterprise IC and people leader has been one of the most foundational cruxes of my of my entire sales success. And when I was younger in sales, I didn't actually realize what I was doing. It was just very instinctive and intuitive to me that of course you would want to stay in touch with these people, even if they can't give you money now, maybe someday, or maybe they know somebody that wants to give me money,
or maybe they'll get promoted later and they can give you money.
Absolutely. Yes. It was very intuitive to me. And then the more experience I got and the more different roles I took on, the more formal the process became, to now it's, something that's well, I really take it very seriously. Shout outs to everybody that has dropped their role and title in the chat. It looks like we have a lot of founders running founder-led sales motions. And a special shout out to our bestie Levy. Yay. So exciting. Monica and I, Taylor, had the privilege of working with Levy at the company that we both worked for, where we got to meet. Let me come to you on this question as well, Taylor. And I'm wondering if you can approach it more from the perspective of a CRO or sales leader who has a big number against their name that they need to deliver, or maybe their job's going to be on the line if they don't. And they want to encourage relationship building, but struggle to let off the gas when it comes to building pipe, and are maybe feeling some conflict in those two things.
Yeah, and I love talking with both of you, because our experiences are so complementary, and we can fill a lot of puzzle pieces for each other. But I think there's a couple things when I was thinking about this from a leadership perspective. I think one of the biggest misses I see is that a lot of leaders try and insert themselves when the deal is falling apart, or when the momentum is starting to slow down, and they say, "Oh, okay, I got to go save this deal." There's really not a lot you can do at that point, or your impact's going to be severely lessened. It's not like, oh, the CRO, the VP's here. Well, now I'm coming to the table. But I think a lot of the sales motion is just kind of structured that way, and leaders instinctually think, okay, it's my job to save this. Where actually you can add a lot more value being there early in the process, being that extra voice, having that impact as another perspective. Typically, you're going to have more experience than your reps. You're going to have access to more resources. You're going to have seen more deals. and maybe know a little bit more about the industry, that perspective is really helpful and adds a ton of value early in the sales process. That might be title matching. That might be working directly with that main point of contact that your rep is working with. Maybe you're joining calls, maybe you're not, depends on your bandwidth. I think the really key thing to keep in mind is when you are talking with your reps, and I always made a point of this, to explain why you're joining, and not be taking over the deals, but explain the value that you can bring, how you would like to join that sales process, and then to get buy-in from them as well, so that the reps really fully understand, hey, my VP's not taking this deal from me. Here's the specific role that they are going to play. And then, over time, it should be that the reps see value from your inclusion and then seek to bring you in proactively a little earlier.
I like that a lot. I mean, raise of hands, who's worked for a sales leader or a founder who's tried to be the white knight persona? And have they ever actually saved a deal for you?
No.
So I want to stay on that because I think it's a really important topic. Later in the deep sales playbook, there's a lot of conversation around prioritizing long-term success over short-term gains, which, as we've already started talking, is great in theory, but I think it's maybe a little bit more difficult in practice. It's certainly more difficult for individual contributors. So Monica, you were talking from the perspective of a founder who's maybe still leading that sales-led motion. Mm-hmm. How much access is too much? Like, at what point does access to a founder, a CRO, C-suite, whatever, add value in the eyes of a customer? And at what point does it tell a customer, like, if the founder is this involved in the deal, like, is this a legit company?
I have so many different ways to approach this question, Leslie. And I mean, look, like in the early stages, that might be the right thing to do, like in some senses, like let's take the example of a startup that's selling to SAP, like they know, like they know that you're a tiny company. They know that this is a big deal for them. And so there's only so much like fronting you can do and be like, oh, we're very busy. We've got lots of meetings. They know, like they know you don't have a big office. Like they can tell. But beyond that, I think that something that people can kind of think about here is like, when you are selling as a founder, you're in that moment, you're not playing the role of the founder of the company. You should actually be playing the role of a rep. That is the hat that you're wearing at that moment. And one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of startups make is that you can force revenue in the early days by, drawing on executive credibility and drawing on your network and being like, hey, like it's only $50,000. Like just buy it. Like it's going to be good. Me. But what you're doing is you're borrowing from your future LTV when you're doing that. And
just explain LTV for everybody.
Yeah, that's lifetime value of a customer. So time and time again, what we see happen when companies over rely on that founder magic in the early stages is you can get some money from some companies where, it's actually like it's a big deal to you at that time, but it's not really that much money for them. Like it's like less than $100K or whatever it is. But what you're not getting is you're not getting organizational buy-in. You're not getting any commitment to implementation. You're probably not talking to enough people at the company. Like I guarantee you don't have 7 to 10 people that you talked to in the buying circle in those deals. And like, I always think of Tupac for some reason, like this, like that Tupac lyric, like I made a G today, but you made it in a sleazy way. Not all revenue is equal. And I know that it's really hard to hear that because when you're in those early stages and you're trying to climb the mountain to your first million or your first 5 million, you're like, we just need those deals. But it always comes out in the wash eventually. And, if you're doing that because you want to exit or you want to raise capital, people are going to look at the deals that you have and the relationships that you have, and they're actually going to look at those contracts, and they're going to be like, okay, great, like this company has been with you for 3 years. How have you grown that account? And if the answer is we haven't, we've just been really lucky that they keep telling us they're going to renew, even though we only talk to them twice a year, then your valuation isn't going to reflect the revenue that you earned. And so it's, even though it's more difficult at the beginning, it's really worthwhile to, like, if you're selling, really treat yourself like a sales rep, block out your day, have boundaries around your time, run a process the same way that a salesperson would do. Take advice from people like me and Taylor and Leslie, even though you might think that it's beneath you, because it will pay off in the long term. Because what you'll be getting is real money from real customers that really want to work with you.
I agree so much. I agree so much that frustration around the things that you just said and founders not adopting them is one of the reasons that I so firmly moved up channel to like the 10 million plus. Because it's like you made a G today, but you made it in a sleazy way. Like, founders, we're so proud of every deal you close, but you are not a sales expert. You have closed maybe 3 to 10 deals when you've had full control over the product roadmap and the price point. And often when I dig into those deals, they are bad deals.
They're bad deals. Yeah.
They're very bad deals. So I think that's spot on. Such brilliant advice. And to bring us back to that, like, how much should you be involved in a deal? I am working with a client right now who is using an outsourced SDR firm. And so a lot of what I'm coaching them on is discovery. And they have AEs in-house. And the COO and the CEO, those are the co-founders, were still joining every discovery call.
What?
Dude.
Both of them?
No, one at a time. Well, sometimes yes. And to which I ask,
weird experience for the customer. Like, you get on a discovery call and there's like 3 people from the other side.
Yes. It would be like this. It would be like all 3 of us just pop onto the screen and there's like one stranger on the other side that was like, oh, I just had some questions about IT consulting. God, golly.
I don't have budget.
But what I realized really quickly when I was digging in was that they really viewed their participation as a value add, both for the AE, like they thought they were doing something really special for their AE, and they thought they were doing something really special for the customer, but neither the customers or the AEs felt
valued it. Yeah.
Well,
because let me guess, like, they didn't have any plan for the value that they were adding on those calls, right? Like, they weren't like, I'm going to share this perspective or this information on this. They were just like, I'm here.
Yeah, like, it is me, COO. I gift you with my presence. It was really interesting to dig into, and they've made a wonderful pivot. Like, really excited to see the impact of it, and they still are joining calls, but middle funnel. And with a really explicit purpose to share a client success story that mirrors what has come up during discovery when the AE's been able to own the relationship building. So I share that because it leaves the power and the ownership of building that genuine connection with the AE, which is where I believe it should sit. But it gives the founder, the COO, whoever, the opportunity to come in and deepen the relationship the prospect feels with the organization. Because they are adding explicit value, relevant value, and it's, middle of the funnel, it's qualified, you're doing your mutual action planning. So it's like, I don't know. I think that there's a right time and a wrong time to be in the sales cycle. If you are maybe past the founder-led sales process, and that you really need to ask yourself, is this about me?
Yeah.
Or is this actually about serving my team or my client?
Yeah. I mean, everything with intention, right? Like, when I was a rep, I pulled my CEO, my CTO in on deals, up to a pretty far point, but like with a very specific purpose. And like, I mean, I did this because I knew that they were going to mess up my deal if I didn't tell them exactly what to do. Like, that's the thing too. Like if you have a sales team, I mean, we hear both sides of it, right? Like they might not tell you directly, but they don't want you going off the rails in meetings, which like you're doing because that's what you're used to doing. And it's ultimately a distraction. So I think that it's definitely a tool that you can use, but you have to understand why you're using that tool and exactly what purpose you want it to serve in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Taylor, talk to me about how, because I know we have some individual contributors or folks that are more in like the front line, maybe like first or second line leadership on the call today. Like, how do they manage maybe both like expectation setting around this and also like creating the structure for what good does look like when a founder is C-suite is on the call?
Yeah, and Monica hit it on the head. That very specific mandate for why they're joining, what you're hoping to accomplish, and where they're going to add value is so important. And I would say just for the individual contributors, like don't be afraid of bringing your leadership on. Don't be afraid of bringing outside resources. Even if you were the world's greatest account executive, it's going to feel weird to an organization if you were the only person talking to them at every stage for every conversation. And I've been through that with, as a buyer, and it's just like, oh, okay, is there like support people? Or maybe someone knows more about this topic, or like, are you going to introduce me to, it's like, am I just working with you throughout this process? So, part of the journey with me and working with my AEs was helping them understand, why do we bring in other people? And Leslie, you'd said, I think it was to deepen the relationship with the org. That's absolutely part of it. It's like, oh, okay, there are multiple people here. They've got different hats, different expertise. This is great. I'm getting different perspectives, different layers.
They coordinate, they talk to each other. They all know the same things about me. Like
exactly. It can be really to your advantage when you bring additional people on and they already know what's going on and they're ready to add value. That's a huge value. Now, people could come in and they could ask all the same questions and then kind of make you look bad a little bit, which is where the prep comes into play, right? You want that founder, that CTO coming in fully prepped. Hey, we've talked to them about these things. These are the 4 things that came up in discovery. Here's the things they like about our product. Here's the questions that they have, XYZ. Prepare them as fully as possible. And then again, be really specific and like, hey, I need help in explaining our privacy approach, or hey, can you talk through the McDonald's story, stuff like that. That's the absolute best way to use them. But again, lean into it, because that's actually going to add a ton of value in your deals when you're coordinated and when you have them prepared.
Totally.
I see a question here from Frank that I'd love to dig into. So the question is, how do you build trust, build relationships when your interactions with potential clients are virtual? Frank, I gotcha. I was inside sales. Like I very much was trained in more traditional, like non-SaaS sales environments, like in like telesales and in full cycle inside sales and agency work. So I feel you. I feel the challenge. I'd love to hear a twist on this though, because another call out from the Deep Sales Playbook was the use of sales intelligence tools. So how can Frank build that trust, those relationships? And I think the next question I want to ask is about the extensive research piece that we pull out, because I think both of those are important here. But let's stick on the tools first. Like, what tools should Frank be using to build trust and relationships virtually?
If I were starting from scratch, assuming that you have nothing right now, When I was thinking about this tools question, by the way, I just want to say, outside of anything else that you're doing, most people wait way too long to get a CRM. If you don't have one, just go do that right now.
Yeah.
I am a one-person business and I have HubSpot. So you can do it. Even though you can do it on a spreadsheet, you're going to keep that spreadsheet for way longer than you should. So that's one thing that I would say. But if I had to just start from literally nowhere, I would go with Apollo and Sendoso. I am not sponsored by either of those. They can totally sponsor me if they want to, because I talk about them all the time. I think Apollo has done a really great job of building in like good versions of all of the data tools that you would need to start understanding how to target customers appropriately and when is the best time to talk to them. And then Sendoso is a really great way to keep customers warm outside of just communicating on email, LinkedIn, the normal ways. You don't even have to have a subscription. You can just like send one-offs there. But I would start with that. Like the most important thing that customers respond to, and this came up in the LinkedIn report as well, is relevance. So, they don't really care like if you went to the same college as them, or if you know something about the city that they live in, or even that you sold to a bunch of their competitors. What they really want to know is, do you have something that can help me right now? And so if you can show that you're showing up to talk to them at that time for a very well-defined reason, then that builds a lot of trust right away.
Okay, so CRM, Apollo, and Apollo does leads and sequencing being able to send messages in a sequence with some automation, and Sendoso and a gifting platform or a direct mail platform. Okay, I was not expecting that.
Really? What would you say?
CRM, 100%. If you are still trying to scale a business on Excel or worse, Google Sheets, like just burn it to the ground. So absolutely. I also am a HubSpot girly, and I also am a one-person business. I have a marketing starter and sales starter. Folks, I think it's like $100 a month.
Yeah, it's great.
Like I could not survive without it in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would not bode well for me to not have a structured place and a single source of truth, because even though I'm only one person, it's still important for me to have a single source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
The other one would be attention.tech, my conversational intelligence bot, which
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm going to drop it. I'm so obsessed with, I don't have like an affiliate link or anything from them, but I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. And I don't know. So the question that I had actually put in our little like pre-work doc was, assuming that there are folks on the call that are bootstrapping or their runway is looking a bit slim and they want to know what the essential tech stack is on a super, super budget. I said, let's say you have $250 a month to spend per rep on tech. What would you spend that $250 on? So definitely like $100 towards HubSpot,
Mm-hmm.
$100 towards attention.tech, towards my conversational intelligence bot. And then I would say LinkedIn. My last one would be LinkedIn.
So that's an interesting one. And I forgot about conversational intelligence because I just assume that automatically everybody has it, but they actually don't.
They don't, yeah.
They should, even if it's just like fireflies. It doesn't have to be something sales specific, but attention is really good. I've been using Sybil a lot, which I also love for anything customer.
And they have a freemium motion, don't they, Sybil?
I think that
you gotta go get your affiliate links sorted.
I know, I really need to do that. Most of them have a freemium motion, but I found that they're all worth paying for because like you max out on the free ones really quickly. I know that I will probably get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but I honestly think that a lot of people can get away with LinkedIn Premium. I don't think that you really need Sales Nav. If I had to pick one, I would pick Apollo Sales Nav.
I would also put Apollo in that third slot and go with LinkedIn Premium until you reach a certain point of, I think there's maybe
LinkedIn Premium still costs money.
It does.
like it costs $600 a year. So that's $50 a month. So if we're looking at a $250 tech stack spend, that's still $50 of it.
That is true. Okay.
I don't know enough about Apollo, but like the LinkedIn stuff, and I'm thinking from an SMB mid-market perspective, like I'm trying to go in there and understand who's still at the company, what the org chart looks like, get the contact info there. If that's something Apollo can accomplish for me, then that like I need contact info, and then I need to organize that outreach in some way, and I absolutely need that in the tech stack. Now, maybe if it's really super early stage, you've got a really small TAM that you're going after, and maybe you don't need that whole functionality, but I think as soon as you start to see any sort of scale, Apollo becomes really critical.
Yeah, I have seen it work with some companies that are super, super, super niche. Like you sell to multifamily real estate investors, you probably shouldn't get Apollo. You should probably get like an industry specific database.
Yeah,
sure.
They do have a lightweight CRM that's built in. I wouldn't recommend it because you're gonna have to migrate eventually. So you might as well just start. I mean, if I really had to, I would probably say start with free HubSpot, pay $99 a month for Apollo, get your conversational intelligence tool, and get LinkedIn Premium. You could do that for $250.
Nice.
Any swaps you're making, Taylor?
No, that sounds pretty good. The conversational intelligence tool, from the standpoint of being able to take away a lot of admin work, make sure you don't forget anything. Like, hey, this is summarized, it's in the notes. I'm not letting anything slip through the cracks. I don't have to take a bunch of call notes. Like that stuff, that gets really critical early on. And there's a ton of learnings as you're scaling that motion.
So many. And also, can you imagine how powerful it is to be able to have access to every customer conversation you've ever had since the beginning of your company? Oh my gosh. Like I just implemented one of these for one of my clients, and it's like, oh, we've got this company, it's coming up on their renewal, and they haven't talked to us in 9 months. Why did they buy? No one knows, because there's no record of it.
Yeah. I think it is an incredible way to retain institutional knowledge without having to rely on retention of your reps, or like hoping your reps put the right information into your CRM or captured it. Otherwise, it's a great fail safe. I love it. Okay, here's another tech question that I think pretty much every founder is asking right now, and it's, what am I supposed to be doing with AI? I think everybody's asking this right now in general. I was on a call right before this for a group I'm in called Rev Room. And Kyle Coleman, who used to be at Clary and now he's at Copy AI, he was our like AMA speaker today. And that's like marketing and sale, like revenue leaders in that group. And all of them were like, what are the right use cases? Where should I be spending not just money, but like putting humans resourced against like solving this problem? So let's spend just a couple minutes on AI. Maybe number one tip for founders or sales leaders to better leverage AI to achieve their revenue goals. Taylor, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I think my number one tip is nothing that AI touches is a finished product. I think we talked about that last time. It can be a great way to get you 70% there, maybe with whatever task you're on. But it's always going to need kind of that human element to finish it. I think, we've all seen the sales emails that are AI generated, and they're cute, and they need a lot of work. Yeah. But they can do a good amount of that legwork for you. And so don't send anything that's AI generated. But when I'm putting my sales leader hat on, when I was thinking about where and how to implement AI, I wanted to think about what were the most time-consuming, tasks that my reps were doing, and maybe stack rank those. It's like, is that call prep? Is that meeting summaries? Is that deck build? Whatever that may be. Focus on one thing at a time and try and identify. Okay, my reps are telling me they're getting incredibly bogged down with call research. Okay, how can I now? I'm going to look for tools that might help me with that research phase, and really focusing kind of one block at a time.
Yep. I would agree. I think it's not, when you're starting out and you don't have rev ops team, a ton of budget, sales enablement team, like you don't really have the resources, both people and monetarily, to really like map out your approach. It's AI is not there to tell you things that you don't know. It's there to be your assistant. Like it is your new VA. So anything that you're like, oh, like we would love to be able to do this, but we just don't have the time. Like you probably do if you can use an AI enabled tool. I use a tool called beautiful.ai for deck building because y'all, it takes so much time, even if you're using Google Slides. I just hate it. But I do need to have like nice presentations. And so I use beautiful.ai and it literally takes me like 30 minutes to put together like a 2-hour presentation once I have the content. And it's awesome.
And it really are legitimately beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and they are so easy. It automatically sizes everything for you. They even have like, you can put in a topic and it'll generate a presentation for you. They're not great, but if you really are like, I don't know where to start, you do have to pay for it, but it's well worth it. Like you're talking about like, you can easily spend like 8 to 10 hours putting together something for a client. And like you just should not be spending that time. So I would look at like Taylor said, anything that you're like, I wish that we could like, be at this level, but we just don't have the time yet. Like find an AI tool to help you do that. I wouldn't worry so much about like LLMs and generative AI until you really understand what it is that you need to know and like what the output is that you want.
Yeah, really reasonable advice. Maybe a call to action for folks that have joined us today is to take an hour next week to do an audit.
Yeah.
And to find just one thing that they are like, wow, if I could get an assist on this, that would save me a lot of time and a lot of headache. And then just start by automating that one single thing. I feel like a challenge with something like AI is because it can do so many things for so many people in so many ways that it can easily become a source of overwhelm because you don't know where to start. So start with something. Totally. Yes. Which is, it's fun. Like AI is fun to learn about. So like, I get it, folks. I've done the rabbit hole. I shared in the chat one of my favorite ChatGPT prompts that's super simple. We're talking like, I need to prep for a discovery meeting or even just a cold call with somebody and I only have 60 seconds. Easy way that you can use chat. It's, you're not crazy prompt engineering or coding or anything. You're just uploading a 10K or uploading some website copy to chat and asking them to help you with your research. But that probably saves me 15 minutes. So you think about the repetition of a task that's 15 minutes now taking 60 seconds, and then I can repurpose that time to really sit with the information and think about what it's telling me and how I can translate that into value on the call. So to Taylor's point, it's about that assist and how we can use that assist to make us, better, faster, stronger, whatever, instead of thinking about AI.
Yeah. There's also something about it where like, if you're like, for a lot of the companies that I work with that are, they're like on the path to 20 million and like big venture scale, until the plane has fully left the runway, you really want to be mindful of giving yourself the space to do things that don't scale when it comes to your customers. Like learning about your market and having conversations with customers is not something that you really want to worry too much about, like making scalable at the early stages, because that's where your real growth and your learning is going to come from. So like, don't take that opportunity away from yourself too soon.
So speaking of research, customer research in that context, one of the big areas that this playbook on deep selling focused on was extensive research. And that was something that clearly set top performers or deep sellers apart from the average performer. So I have a question for our audience first. I want folks to be honest. How many of you have a specific process, a repeatable process for research that you use or that you teach your reps? I'm curious. I'm curious if anybody's going to be honest here. Be honest here, folks. And maybe Monica Taylor, talk to me about how this looks, how research looks at different stages in the sales cycle. I know maybe Monica, I'll come to you first, because I know something that earlier stage founders owning the sales process will often get confused or frustrated by is like everybody on LinkedIn or wherever being like, everything has to be hyper personalized, blah, blah, blah. And so they're like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to spend an hour researching every single prospect before I even pick up the phone? Right? It is laughable, Taylor. Like that's a wild expectation. But often these founders were technical founders or just came out of non-sales backgrounds. So they don't know what good is when it comes to pre-prospecting research. So
Yeah.
What are those essentials that they need to know before they send that first email, pick up the phone, etc.?
Totally. I'll also say that for all of the people listening to this, qualify what you hear on LinkedIn, because a lot of those people are coming from a very different place than you are. Leslie's like, girl, that's like a whole other live conversation. I saw the other day, a post from one of the influencers. I think he's like a rep at Gong or something like that. And he's like, here's how I prep for my calls for the week. I go to my 6 data and intelligence tools, like contact data and intelligence tools. And he listed like these 6 tools that all cost like
$250 per month. Yeah.
That is so great that you have you have 6 Sense and you have Clarity and yeah, we're not doing that, right? You're also talking about people that are selling at like a fundamentally different part of the adoption curve. And so your sales process changes, right? When you go from like the visionaries to the early adopters and late majority and it gets harder. You have to try harder. There's more competition. So, a lot of those people are working with a tool set that you don't have, and then B, they're just running a different sales motion because they're in a different spot in their growth.
Yeah.
All of that to say, I think at a really basic level, so if you're, for your outreach and your targeting, it's company and industry research, just things that you can segment on. Don't try to get too crazy. If you see something really obvious around intent, that can be sort of like your one-off outreach, but 80% of what you're doing should be segmented by industry and then company based on the demographics and firmographics that you've identified are important in your ICP. I would say that you should probably segment those a lot more closely than you think. I was just going through this exercise for somebody recently, and they were like, our core ICP is like companies over 500 million that are like publicly traded. And I'm like, cool, that's like a lot of people.
Say more.
But then when we really get down to it, it's like, okay, they're in these industries because those industries have these types of needs and, they're global, et cetera, et cetera. So you should probably have like 3 to 5 different categories that you're segmenting on. Once you get to the discovery call, it's all about the person that you're talking to. You've already sort of sorted them for relevance. And so it's them, their connections, any recent events that might add like a little extra flavor to what they're talking to you right now. And then when you get into like middle funnel and bottom of funnel,
I'm going to interrupt you because I want to pass it to Taylor because I want to hear his thoughts on this as well. But such a big +1 for the segmentation. You and I have talked about this many, many times. I teach my clients a process called value-based segmentation, which is just like, let's build in some more layers. So it feels like we're actually talking to them instead of talking to executives like them in the space of industry.
In healthcare.
Huge fan of those comments. Taylor, I want you to pick up this thread specifically on thinking about pivoting from the industry and account heavy research being done during the prospect and during the top of funnel to what needs to happen during that like discovery meeting middle funnel. And I'm also hoping you can share some insights on like how should we continue to be researching and qualifying through middle and bottom of funnel.
Cool. Yeah, and it was actually funny in the deep sales playbook. They talked about, as a buyer, like, what's going to help a seller be successful. And industry research was right up there with account research, which I didn't expect. I thought the account research was going to be way higher, but shows that being involved in that stuff's really important. The way I think about discovery meetings is it's a phenomenal chance to stand out, and it's a really great opportunity to earn the right to continue the conversation. So I always think about it. There's an example from Hitch when they're kind of like, oh, I come 90, you come 10, and it's Kevin James and Will Smith, and they're doing their kiss. But I kind of think about the discovery call, like I got to come 90% of the way so that the prospect will come 10% of the way. So I want to come to that discovery call, and it varies based on your sales motion and size. If we're talking mid-market versus SMB, there's different barriers there. But in general, I want to come with an idea of how I can help them that goes beyond their website and maybe a headline, so that I can show them, hey, this sales rep has done a little more than what 90%, and most sales reps don't show up with much research at all. But if you're showing like, hey, I'm actually genuinely curious about your business. And so think about that bar differently depending on how big your prospect is, the opportunities, stuff like that. But I want to impress them a little bit with what I've come with. But if you know the industry really well, if you know your business and product really well, and if leadership has enabled you to say, hey, here's how we sell into financial services, our common challenges, and you know that piece, you can adapt that knowledge to what's going on at their company. Oh, hey, this is the typical challenges that we see based on what I've read about this company. Here's a couple that are going to maybe stick out, and then I can cite that research as I talk to them, share a case study, build from there. And then as we're going down the process, hopefully you get, some good reciprocity in that discovery call, which again, I think reciprocity comes from being very prepared and coming with an informed opinion. You're not always going to be right, but I think sellers or buyers really respect even that you came with an opinion, even if it's not right, and they'll correct you if you're wrong. That's going to happen, and that's also really valuable. And then as you're going down that deal cycle, you got your Google alerts set up, you got your news alerts, but you want to pressure test some of this stuff against your main contact, your champion, multiple people to get their perspective on how things have evolved. Hey, how did that call go? Is a great piece as well, and that came up in the report. Deep sellers ask for feedback on the calls. Yeah. You're going to get learnings from that piece too. That's an area I didn't expect to see in there, that I think is going to be really important moving forward. Building that relationship, ask for feedback. Hey, John, how did that call go with Leslie and Monica? What did you think? Building that trust there is another great way to gain some insight into what's going on.
Nice. Yeah, I think we don't often look at feedback as a form of research. And that is certainly untapped. And maybe it's as easy right now as doing the research with your customer success or account management colleagues, because they're already often having those conversations with customers. And, as you get more customers or as you get more comfortable asking folks for their time, I'd like to take a pivot because it looks like we have some folks joining us that sell physical, tangible products. And I know that most of our experience comes out of services and SaaS. What would change, if anything, in the advice that we're giving if somebody was selling a widget versus a service or SaaS solution?
So, I've worked with a couple of companies that sold hardware products in construction, energy, things like that. And it's not really as different as you think it would be. If you're selling this Purist water bottle, obviously that's very different, and probably none of this applies to you because this is a B2C product. But if you're selling if you're selling anything B2B, it's important for two reasons. One is to gauge the opportunity. Usually I'm just going to take a guess and say, if you're selling an industrial product, there's usually a good amount of install, and then a lot of your money comes from like their actual usage of that product over time. And so you want to know what the potential is. But then what it really comes down to is that just because people know what your product is doesn't mean that it's immediately obvious to them how they are going to use it and why they should make it a priority right now. And that's really what the core of sales is all about. We think that like if we make a good product and we put it out into the market and we just tell people what it is, then they'll be like, oh, I know. Yeah, right. Like one of those, or like, I also want to save money on my electricity bills for my 30 buildings that I own or whatever. Wrong, because they're either using something already and they don't know why they should look at something else, or they don't even have a solution like this yet. They don't know that it exists and they don't know why they should be doing anything different. And so in sales, a lot of the work that we do is actually change management and mindset shift. And that's why you need to do customer research, because you need to understand where somebody's coming from so that you can then move them to a different place.
Bingo. There's a reason that 57% of B2B deals, and this is over 2.5 million data points, 57% end in no decision.
Yeah.
Because we are not connecting the dots for them. To help them understand why it's worth using their social capital, their budget, their resources to move away from the status quo. Okay, we're almost at time, and I want to come to one of the sections of this report that I think is so important that we haven't touched yet, and that is social selling. For folks that are joining us, I would love to see if you are using a social selling motion right now. And if you are, like, is that LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Where is it? Taylor, talk to me about social selling, and maybe from the perspective of somebody that is super new to it. Like they're being told they need to be active on LinkedIn. In what ways? And to Monica's point, like connect the dots. Like if you were going to sell somebody on the value of social selling, what would be in it for them?
Yeah. I think to 90+% of people, if they hear social selling, they think of, I'm going to send them a connection request and then I'm going to share how great my service is. Like, boom, this is foolproof. I'm the only one doing this. I think there's a couple hurdles, right? People feel like I'm not active enough on LinkedIn to do this. And my prospect is not active enough on LinkedIn to do this, right? And sometimes, you just get people who are just not on LinkedIn. They don't share anything. It's not a great channel for them. I don't think that should diminish the opportunity that this new channel presents for you. If you think, okay, email's saturated, I don't have the right cold call number, people aren't picking up the phone. Well, what are your other options, right? I mean, you've got gifting, you've got in-person stuff, but LinkedIn's a really wonderful channel because there are people that are active on there and there's a lot of shadow activity. So I think that's something important to note. There's a lot of people that are active that just don't comment or post, but they're on there. They're seeing what's happening. They're consuming news about their friends, about their company. Maybe they reshare company posts, stuff like that. And so it's a great way to potentially try and build a relationship outside of maybe more transactional channels like calls and emails where you're really trying to get that pitch. LinkedIn is another great place for them to see your name, to see your company's name. Maybe that's comments on some of their reshares. Maybe you test out DMs, but more in a relationship building sense. Like, hey, I saw your company's doing this. Congrats. Or, hey, congrats on 5 years. Like not really pushing for the meeting, but building up a sort of kind of digital relationship where they're just seeing your name a lot, right? And you're creating that space for you two to kind of get to know each other a little bit. So that's how I think of LinkedIn. I try and not use it too much as a transactional get the pitch type of channel, but as a, hey, they're going to see my name here in kind of a different way. And when they go to my profile, and this is really important too, even if you don't use LinkedIn a lot, that doesn't mean you can't create a really strong profile that looks professional and competent and has everything in there and what you do for folks, what work you've done, your work history, all that. Make sure that's really complete. That doesn't require you getting super active on LinkedIn, but when people see your name or you're interacting with them, they're going to come to your profile. Make sure that presents the image that you'd like it to. And that's another way you can give yourself a leg up.
Really good advice. And you can create a beautiful profile in an hour or less. So don't overthink it. Don't let it stress you out. Like just go on and add in some positions, connect some logos, have a nice headline that is not just your job title. It is something about you and the way that you help people. Taylor, your comments were very full circle to where we started the conversation, which I love so much, because we started the conversation talking about how to build relationships, how to build genuine connection, the power of nurture. And I think the way that you framed it is so smart, that some of the more direct sales channels like cold calling or email can feel very transactional, because it's like, here's reason for reach out. Shall we meet? Whereas LinkedIn gives us this really incredible opportunity to show more of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it certainly gives us an opportunity to make sure that every single interaction that we have with the prospect isn't just about selling. Which is quite nice. And I know all three of us really advocate for sales approaches that index heavily on making deposits before ask and playing on reciprocity and leading with value. But LinkedIn is still a little bit extra. So I love the way that you frame that, Taylor. Monica, final thoughts for us today?
On social or just on everything?
On life.
Threw a curveball at the end here.
Yeah,
wow.
I really did. There's a full moon next week. Whatever you want to talk about.
We're in eclipse season now. All bets are off. I would say that I think coming off of some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat, so glad to see so many founders here, and keep seeking out resources like this, because I know that it feels really hard, and I know that it feels like no one's really quite doing what you're doing, and like your company is different. But the reality is that like there are just so many canonical truths in sales that just work in 99% of situations. And the more that you learn like that, just that baseline knowledge of how to operate a sales program, the easier it will be. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to invent an entirely new process or motion for your company that's never been done before. There are so many resources out there for you, and people that you can ask that will get you very far.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for everybody that took time out of your Friday to join us. To Monica's point, you are not alone.
Yes.
And everything is more similar than it is different. So maybe we will be back by popular demand again. I don't know, folks. You tell us if you would value more of this type of content, and we can deliver it for you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.